The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Practical Vedanta, Part 3, Segment 2. What is the outcome of philosophy? Is it that the idea of personal God is not sufficient? We have to get to something higher, to the impersonal idea. It is the only logical step that we can take. Not that the personal idea would be destroyed by that, not that we supply proof that the personal God does not exist, but we must go to the impersonal for the explanation of the personal. For the impersonal is much higher generalization than the personal. The impersonal can only be infinite. The personal is limited. Thus, we preserve the personal and do not destroy it. Often the doubt comes to us that if we arrive at the idea of the impersonal God, the personal will be destroyed. If we arrive at the idea of the impersonal man, the personal will be lost. But the Vedantic idea is not the destruction of the individual, but its real preservation. We cannot prove the individual by any other means than by referring to the universal, by proving that this individual is really the universal. If we think of the individual as separate from everything else in the universe, it cannot stand even for a minute. Such a thing never existed. Secondly, by the application of the second principle and the explanation of everything must come out of the nature of the thing, we are led to a still bolder idea, and one even more difficult to understand. It is nothing less than this, that the impersonal being, our highest generalization, is in ourselves, and we are that. O Shvetaketu, thou art that. You are that impersonal being, that God for whom you have been searching all over the universe. It all the time in yourself. Yourself not in the personal sense, but in the impersonal. The man we know now, the manifested, is personalized. But the reality of this is the impersonal. To understand the impersonal, we have to refer it to the impersonal. The particular must be referred to the general, and that impersonal is the truth, the self of man. There will be various questions in connection with this, and I shall try to answer them as we go on. Many difficulties will arise, but first, let us clearly understand the position of monoism. As manifested beings, we appear to be separate, but our reality is one. And the less we think of ourselves as separate from that one, the better for us. The more we think of ourselves as separate from the whole, the more miserable we become. From this monoistic principle, we get at the basics of ethics. And I venture to say that we cannot get any ethics from anywhere else. We know that oldest idea of ethics was the will of some particular being or beings, but few are ready to accept that now, because it would only be a partial generalization. The Hindus say we must not do this or that because the Vedas say so. But the Christian is not going to obey the authority of the Vedas. The Christian says you must do this and not do that because the Bible says so. They will not be binding on those who do not believe in the Bible. But we must have a theory which is large enough to take in all these various grounds. Just as there are millions of people who are ready to believe in a personal God, There have also been thousands of brightest minds in this world who felt that such ideas were not sufficient for them and wanted something higher. And wherever religion was not broad enough to include all these minds, the result was that the brightest minds in the society were always outside of religion, and never was this so marked as at the present time, especially in Europe. To include these minds, therefore, religion must be broad enough. Everything it claims must be judged from the standpoint of reason. Why religions should claim that they are not bound to abide by the standpoint of reason, no one knows. If one does not take the standard of reason, there cannot be any true judgment, even in the case of religions. One religion may ordain something very hideous. For instance, the Mohammedan religion allows Mohammedans to kill who are not of their religion. It is clearly stated in the Quran, kill the infidels if they do not become Mohammedans. They must be put to fire and sword. Now, if we tell a Mohammedan that this is wrong, he will naturally ask, how do you know that? How do you know it is not good? My book says it is. If you say your book is older, there will come the Buddhist who will say, my book is much older still. Then will come the Hindu and say, my books are oldest of all. Therefore, referring to books will not do. Where is the standard by which you compare? You will say, look at the Sermon on the Mount, and the Mohammedan will reply, look at the ethics of the Quran. The Mohammedan will say, who is the arbiter as to which is the better of the two? Neither the New Testament nor the Quran can be the arbiter in a quarrel between them. There must be some independent authority which is universal. And what is more universal than reason? It has been said that reason is not strong enough. It does not always help us to get at the truth. Many times it makes mistakes. And therefore, the conclusion is that we must believe in the authority of a church. That was said to me by a Roman Catholic. But I could not see the logic of it. On the other hand, I should say, if reason be so weak, a body of priests would be weaker. And I am not going to accept their verdict, but I will abide by my reason. Because with all its weakness, there is some chance of my getting at the truth through it. While by the other means, there is no hope at all. We should therefore follow reason and also sympathize with those who do not come to any sort of belief following reason. For it is better that mankind should become atheist by following reason than blindly believe in 200 million of gods on the authority of anybody. What we want is progress, development, realization. No theories ever made men higher. No amount of books can help us to become purer. The only power is in realization, and that lies in ourselves and comes from our thinking. Let men think. A clod of earth never thinks, but it remains only a lump of earth. The glory of man is that he is a thinking being. It is the nature of man to think, and therein he differs from animals. I believe in reason and follow reason, having seen enough of the evils of authority. For I was born in a country where they have gone to the extreme of authority. The Hindus believe that creation has come out of the Vedas. How do you know there is a cow? Because the word cow is in the Vedas. Because the word man is there. If it had not been, there would have been no man outside. That is what they say. Authority with a vengeance. And it is not studied as I have studied it, but some of the most powerful minds have taken it up and spun around wonderful logical theories around it. They have reasoned it out, and there it stands, a whole system of philosophy, and thousands of the brightest intellects have been dedicated throughout thousands of years to the working out of this theory. Such has been the power of the authority, and great are the dangers thereof. It stunts the growth of humanity, and we must not forget that we want growth. Even in the all relative truth, more than truth itself, we want the exercise. This is our life. The monoistic theory has this merit that it is the most rational of all religious theories that we can conceive of. Every other theory, every conception of God, which is partial and little and personal, is not rational. And yet monoism, this grandeur that it embraces all these partial conceptions of God as being necessary for many. Some people say that this personal explanation is irrational, but it is consoling. They want a consoling religion, and we understand that it is necessary for them. The clear light of truth, very few in this life can bear, much less live up to. It is necessary, therefore, that this comfortable religion should exist. It helps many souls to be a better one. Small minds whose circumference is very limited and which require very little things to build them up never venture higher to soar high in thought. Their conceptions are very good and helpful to them, even if only they are little gods and symbols. But you have to understand the impersonal, for it is in and through that alone that these others can be explained. Take, for instance, the idea of a personal God. A man who understands and believes in the impersonal, John Stuart Mill, for example, may say that a personal God is impossible and cannot be proved. I admit with him that a personal God cannot be demonstrated, but he is the highest reading of the impersonal that can be reached by the human intellect. And what else is the universe but various readings of the absolute? It is like a book before us, and each one has brought this intellect to read it, and each one has to read it for himself. There is something which is common in the intellect of all men. Therefore, certain things appear to be the same to the intellect of mankind. That you and I see a chair proves that there is something common to both our minds. Suppose a being comes with another sense, he will not see the chair at all. But all beings similarly constituted will see the same things. Thus, this universe is the absolute, the unchangeable, the noumen, the noumenonen, and the phenomenon constitutes the reading thereof. For you will first find that all phenomena are finite. Every phenomenon that we see, feel, or think of is finite, limited by our knowledge, and the personal God as we conceive of him is in fact a phenomenon. The very idea of causation exists only in the phenomenal world, and God as the cause of this universe must naturally be thought of as limited, and yet he is the same impersonal God. This very universe, as we have seen, is the same impersonal being read by our intellect. Whatever is reality in the universe is that impersonal being, and the forms and conceptions are given to it by our intellects. Whatever is real in this table is that being, and the table form and all other forms are given by our intellects.